Hey, it's Clay. Welcome to another video. Today, I want to talk to you guys about early extension. Now, this isn't going to be like a quick tip or even like a lesson, but I wanted to share with you kind of the journey that I have been on as an early extender. And just for starters, I will show you a clip of my swing where it was at probably 4 years ago when I started. The first time I took a video of my swing and realized I have tremendous early extension. I might have had some of the worst early extension that I have ever seen since then, and I've observed a lot of golf swings in my last several years of looking at this. I might be one of the worst offenders of early extension in the history of the game of golf. I say that without a lot of pride, but probably the opposite of pride, to my great shame. But I've also worked pretty hard on it, and so I wanted to share a couple of thoughts with you because early extension is kind of an interesting swing flaw where it's hard to resolve and sometimes can be kind of mysterious. If you think about slicing or shanking, like some of those other things have a little bit more of a direct causality, whereas early extension is more of a byproduct of doing something else wrong. And so wanted to share some of those things, at least what's been working for me. So, you've got the regular tips. For example, some people will recommend, putting like your golf bag back here behind your left butt cheek and when you're coming through impact, right, to really push back and try to drive into that golf bag behind you. For me, that worked a little bit, but really fundamentally, I think what has really worked and like truly to get to like the root cause and snuff it out, not just like mitigate it, but really eliminate it. Fundamentally, what needs to happen is you need to change the way that you're applying force and the way you're firing muscles, the sequencing that you're using in your golf swing. And almost the way I think about it is if you think about like track and field, right? There's different types of events. And it's like for my whole life, when I was swinging a golf club, I was doing a javelin throw. And now, instead, I need to perform a hammer throw. I don't know if that analogy is going to make any sense, but it's like you need to be firing your muscles in a totally different manner, not just doing the same activity you were doing, but at a lesser extent. You need to actually like really change how and when you fire your muscles. And so I guess the first, I'm going to make some observations or give some generalities that helped me. So the biggest thing that I would say is my old swing pattern, there was very, very little rotation. So in my mind, a rotation-based golf swing is really more preferable. And if you're early extending, it's really hard to rotate and early extend. Like those concepts are kind of contrasted with one another, I feel like. My old swing pattern, in the backswing, I was a lot of hands and arms. I had very little movement of my lower body to pivot. It was mostly hands and arms. And then, coming into impact, it's a lot of throwing of the angles of the right elbow and right, a lot of this type of movement is the aggressive firing that's going on to generate club head speed through the ball. Whereas with a rotational golf swing, there is a firing of the arm, but it's secondary because what you're really trying to do is pivot the torso. And so that would be my first thought, is you need to get better at rotating your body. So really the first check mark, I'm going to set this down now. You guys can still hear me. The first check mark, when you're making a backswing, and you want to get rid of your early extension, you must do a better job of rotating in the backswing. So when you're making a backswing, one checkpoint to watch is the right knee and the right hip. The right knee needs to straighten and the right hip needs to go back. So it would look something, my old backswing would look like this. And there's a lot of wrist cocking, breaking of the elbows and arms, and my right knee stays very flexed and stable. Whereas with my new swing, I'm actually feeling the opposite. I'm almost feeling like I'm keeping my hands and arm structure. I'm doing a little bit of wrist cocking, but I'm almost feeling like I'm doing this, where my chest is still pointing at my hands. Whereas in the old swing, my chest is like pointing here, and my hands are now way behind me. So rather than retracting this arm this way, my arm is staying in front, and I'm turning my body. If you watch this, all I'm doing is pivoting my torso So now if you point out of my torso, it points at the golf club. To me, that is a really good, and if you watch what's happening with my lower body, right, my knees are changing flex in order to make that happen. My right hip feels very stretched, very like pushed. There's a lot of stretching going on in my glute and my hamstring, and you can see my hips almost feel like I'm pointing my belly button right at the camera. So again, when I'm making a backswing now, I want to feel like I am just going to rotate. Like this is a really good feel for me. Where I have not moved my arms, I've maybe cocked my wrists a little, but all I've done is pivoted my torso. And that's going to give you the incentive to also pivot in the downswing. So now, if the backswing was dominated by right hip back, then the downswing needs to be dominated by left hip back. Not in my old pattern, right? So I was here, and then I would do this, where my right knee is going this way a lot. My right hip is coming forward. That's that kind of goat humping action. Well now, right, so if we start with right hip back, now I'm feeling like I'm keeping right hip back and my left hip is going to join it. And I almost feel like I'm trying to straighten my knees to keep that, back to back type feel. And again, if you don't rotate at all, it's difficult to, you don't have anywhere to go. You don't have any foundation from which to rotate. So you need the rotation in the backswing, and then also to feel like you're doing that where I'm just, when I get to impact, you want to be able to see my left cheek, right? Whereas my old pattern, my hips were relatively square, and you could not see my left side at all. Whereas now at impact, I want to be able that you can see, if you look now, you can see my left. Okay? So that's rotation is thought number one. Thought number two is you need to change how you square the club face. Because if you're going to rotate more, rotation is an element which will open the club face. If I start here at square and I just rotate, you can see my club face went from square to open. So I need to do some of this, bowing of the left wrist, or the extending of the right wrist, however you want to think about it. So to me, I actually feel like I start doing it right away. When I get to the top of my swing, I want to feel like I'm pulling this right wrist back. And I'm just kind of maintaining that all the way through, because that's going to help square my club face through. So rotation was number one. Squaring the club face is number two. Then thirdly, and this is probably the most recent revelation and the one that's probably been the biggest for me, and that's going to be this concept of sequencing. In what order of events do you fire your muscles? And so what I want to encourage you guys to do when you get to the top of your backswing, okay, what I feel like is I'm going to turn and then throw. Whereas in my old pattern, I come here, I don't really turn, I just throw. All I'm doing is firing. I'm firing my right elbow, firing my angles down at the ball. Whereas in a more rotation-based swing, when you're through the ball, you need to keep some angles. There needs to be an angle in the wrist, there needs to be an angle in the elbow. This is still a challenge for me, something I'm really working on, because it's hard. Again, this is where it's like we're learning a brand new motion here. But fundamentally, when I'm coming through impact, right, and I'm driving the left hip back, well, if that means that my chest is going to be a little more open, my right shoulder is going to be closer to the ball. So if I throw my angles while I'm open, my club is way, way far away from the ball. So in order to make that work, for me, it really feels like I got to keep my chest down, my right shoulder. I almost want to feel like I'm doing this, where I'm hitting the ball with my right shoulder, getting the right shoulder down and close. And again, this is the feel for me. Rotate a backswing, and then I'm turning and then throwing. So really, it's that sequence of events. Instead of throwing down, I'm turning and then throwing. That to me is the magic sauce that really, and they, just these little swings, right, where I'm coming to here, I'm just turning and then throwing, turning and then throwing, turning and then throwing. As much as you can exaggerate that. And honestly, it's crazy. Like when I first started doing this, I couldn't even make contact with the ball. My low point was way messed up. I'd top it a bunch. But if you watch these little practice swings I'm taking, I guarantee you there's not a hint of early extension. And so the best way to actually feel that I found is I've got this old 3-wood, and I call it a baseball drill. So if there's like a takeaway drill, it would be this. So you want to start with the club elevated off the ground a couple feet, make your backswing, and then from here, like a baseball player, you want to turn and extend. That's a great feel where I almost feel like when I get to impact, that's when I start throwing. And you still need to throw. You still need to release the angles. Otherwise you won't generate any speed. If you just do this, right, I'm holding and rotating the body, you're gonna hit the ball like 2 feet. So, but it's about sequence, right, where you wanna hold and then throw out in front. So I start a couple feet off the ground, and then I just slowly work my way down. It still is a challenge. Even there, I didn't do it very well. That was a little better. To recap, number 1, you got to rotate. Number 2, you got to close the face better. And number 3, you got to change your sequencing. Again, the sequencing that's working for me is to feel like I'm turning and then throwing the angles out towards the target. Hope that helps you. Early extension's a bugger. Stick with this. I think you can get there. Hope you enjoy this. See you again soon. Thanks. Bye.